In the world of finance, things are always changing, right? It's so easy to get caught up in what's happening right now and just forget about the lessons of the past. But here's the thing. History often holds the real key to understanding our present.
And that is so true, especially when we look at what was probably the single biggest economic event of the entire 20th century. So today, let's take a quick 5-minute look at the Great Depression. We're going to explore what caused it, the catastrophic effects, and the really crucial takeaways from this era. Because understanding what went so wrong back then can absolutely help us navigate the complexities of today.
Okay, so our story doesn't actually start with a crash. Nope, it starts with a massive boom. Picture this, it's the aftermath of World War I, and America is stepping into this incredible era of economic growth and cultural change known as the Roaring '20s.
So troops are coming home from the war, and that gives the economy a real shot in the arm. Then, in 1920, the first radio ad airs, and suddenly everyone wants to buy stuff. By the middle of the decade, Henry Ford's Model T is everywhere. People can travel like never before. Americans just had more money to spend. And with ads blasting from the radio, a whole new consumer culture was born.
And it wasn't just cars. Technology was changing everything inside the modern home. We're talking vacuum cleaners, electric washing machines, radios in the living room. These were total game changers. And because the economy was so hot, banks were practically throwing easy loans at people. Getting the latest modern gadgets, it was easier than ever.
All this spending meant companies were making a ton of money. And pretty soon, the average American started thinking, hey, why am I just buying their products? I want a piece of those profits. The focus shifted from Main Street to Wall Street. For a lot of people, the stock market was the answer. And the excitement was just intense. Get this, between 1922 and 1929, stock market investments shot up by an incredible 218%. Let that sink in for a second. The nation's total wealth basically doubled in less than a decade. It felt like an economic miracle, like this was the new normal.
And this wasn't just a game for the Wall Street elites anymore. It became a national obsession. Seriously, everyone thought they were a financial genius. Cooks, shoeshine boys, taxi drivers, you name it. People from all walks of life were pouring their life savings into the market, convinced they couldn't possibly lose.
But this wasn't just optimism. It was a culture of extreme risk. People were borrowing money to invest more than they actually had, a practice called buying on margin. It's kind of like taking out a loan to go to the casino. And even worse, banks started using their own customers' deposits to speculate in the market. A really dangerous game that nobody seemed to notice as long as stocks kept going up.
But, every wild party has to end sometime. And for the Roaring '20s, the end was going to be sudden, brutal, and it would change the world forever.
It was the one question nobody really wanted to ask. Because while the stock market was soaring to the moon, the real economy, the one on Main Street, was starting to show some serious signs of weakness.
See, underneath all the hype, the economy was starting to falter. Industrial production was slowing, people weren't spending as much, and wages were falling. The easy credit that had fueled the whole boom was starting to dry up. But most investors just ignored these warning signs, right? They just kept on gambling, as if the party would never end.
Then came October 1929. On Black Thursday, a huge wave of selling hit the market. A record 12.9 million shares got sold off, causing an 11% drop. But the real knockout punch came the next week, on Black Tuesday. That's when total panic set in. The market fell another 12%, and fortunes that had taken years to build were just wiped out in a matter of hours.
The crash wasn't just a bad day on Wall Street. Oh no, it was the start of the most severe economic downturn in the history of the industrialized world. The consequences, well, they would be felt by everyone for the next decade.
The stock market wasn't just in a slump, it was in an absolute freefall. Over the next 3 years, the Dow Jones would lose a staggering 90% of its value from its 1929 peak. For every $10,000 an investor had at the market's height, only $1,000 was left.
And as businesses failed, jobs just vanished. At its peak, unemployment in the United States hit 24.9%. That means 1 in every 4 people was out of work. Can you imagine that? A quarter of the entire workforce with no income and no safety net.
And remember the banks that were gambling with their customers' money? When they failed, people lost everything. Savers were lucky to get back just 10 cents for every dollar they had deposited. All across the country, banks were just forced to close their doors.
The human cost was just immense. Bread lines and soup kitchens became a common sight in American cities. It didn't matter if you were a wealthy investor, a factory worker, or just someone who had saved their money in a bank, the Depression found a way to hurt everyone.
But out of all this incredible hardship, some really valuable lessons emerged. The whole crisis spurred the creation of new safeguards to make sure that such a devastating collapse could never, ever happen again.
To restore trust in the banks, the government created the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or FDIC. This agency insures your bank deposits, making sure that even if a bank fails, your savings are protected. And that system is still in place today.
And to regulate Wall Street, the Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC, was born. Its mission is to oversee the financial markets, prevent the kind of fraud and reckless speculation that led to the crash, and protect individual investors.
The Great Depression really serves as this stark reminder of just how powerful greed and fear can be in financial markets. And while we now have safeguards in place, those fundamental human behaviors that caused the crash in the first place, they're timeless. Which leaves us with a final question. Have we truly learned the lessons that history has to offer?